I'm also very happy to welcome one of the parliamentarians from the German Bundestag, Boris Mijatović. Boris, where are you? Can I ask you? It is so bright up here that it's hard to see anybody. Boris, you came, give him a big applause. Your way over here was not quite as long as Lisa's. You came directly from the Bundestag over here? Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. And what are you currently working on in the Bundestag? Why is today so busy?
We are working a lot on humanitarian assistance. Maybe you've heard of the situation in Gaza, but also situation in Sudan, Myanmar, Congo is affecting us most, and we are cutting funds, budgets, and we are fighting from the opposition side to get this reversed. So we are acting to all these people that are in the parliament, taking the majority and getting back more budget for humanitarian aid.
Well, thank you so much for fighting that fight and still being here today. When you arrived earlier today, you said, oh, it's like land under in the office. So you brought your office along. So two of your colleagues are sitting right there. And they also keep you in check, huh?
Yes, they keep an eye on the time because we have to be in Bundestag back again. We already said that we postpone a bit, but yeah, the schedule is busy.
Well, thank you so much. And with this, please take your seat. Give him another applause for being here. Also coming quite a ways from Serbia is Sofija Todorović. Come on up here. Sofija is the director for Youth Initiative for Human Rights in Serbia. And on your way here, you lost your luggage on the bus.
Yeah, actually, I didn't lost it. I left it.
Oh, you left
to be completely honest. Yeah, but I was so excited about the conference, and then we people from the Western Balkans usually sometimes get lost.
Well, you are here now, and what is lost will be found. When we were in Albania, almost everybody lost their iPhones in the cab once. At least, and it always turned up. So thank you so much for being here, and we are very much looking forward that you also bring in the youth perspective.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Adnan, please join me up here on the stage. Give him also a very big applause. Adnan Ćerimagić, you are a senior analyst for the European Stability Initiative, and you're also from Berlin, today at least. You're living in Berlin. So how far did you have to travel to come here today?
Just from Kreuzberg, so 15 minutes, I would say.
So this is not so far away. But you have been working on the region for a very long time. Tell us what you love about the region.
Well, I like the opportunities that the region has in its contribution to what today's or tomorrow's Europe will be. But I'm also very much frustrated by the lack of attention to it. So this event that you've organized kindly or helped organize is a big boost to all of our works because it allows us to share some of the thoughts that we have about the region.
Well, thank you so much. So please also take a seat. And I'm also going to take one now. And I already see the time running, but that can't be it. We have more than 13 minutes. It's really a big pleasure seeing all of you here today. And we want to talk about the state of democracy. And the state of governance and the state of rule of law in the region. So I would love us to start with a very short round of warming up. And what I would like to know from each of you is, how would you describe the state of rule of law, of governance, of democracy in the Western Balkans with one word? Sofija, do you want to start?
Well, yes, I can start, especially having in mind the ongoing situation in Serbia. I would use the word awakening. But as any time when you are awake, you don't know how that will end, but at least it's a good first step.
Well, thank you so much. This is such a great word, awakening. And later on, you are going to tell us a little bit what that specifically means for Serbia, your country, what we are currently seeing on the ground, and if this awakening will also lead to something, staying awake, and also to some reforms and action. Boris, what's your word?
My word is a bit difficult because it's a word that my grandfather always used to take, but it's teško. Teško is the word for hard, so everything's hard. The weather is hard, the climate is hard, life is hard, food is hard, and so is the rule of law. It's a hard task.
It's a really good word, but I have to say, food is not hard. I mean, at least now, right?
Well, if you eat a lot of Banja Lučki kebab, you will have eaten stones in your stomach, and you need a lot of slivovice to make it, work.
All right, so hard. Liza?
Coming from Kosovo, I think uneven would be the best word to describe, especially in the process to European integration and in the normalization dialogue with Serbia and many other processes that go on.
Oh, very good. So we shouldn't just bundle all Western Balkan countries into one bucket, but there are huge differences between the countries, and maybe even within the countries there are differences.
Yes, so let me focus exactly on that. I would say one word, arbitrary, because it's not that there is no rule of law in the Western Balkans, there is, but it's not for everyone and equally applied.
Well, thank you so much. And by now, I also understand the time. It's not counting backwards, but counting forward, because I was getting scared. All right. So earlier on, Boris, you exemplified a little bit what you meant by hard, maybe also picking up on the arbitrary or ambiguous. And I think you used the example of Bosnia-Herzegovina and the rules which are made in the country. Maybe you can explain this also to our audience using that example, because I thought it was so good in illustrating what we are currently seeing in many Western Balkan countries.
From my perspective, there have been some steps taken. So political decision makers have decided to move forward into reforms that are not easy to make in a country that is that much divided, ethnically divided. I think that is part of the huge challenge that we face, that the political system remains in that ethnical division frozen. But still there are some decisions on the way, so this is a good sign. It's not to be measured in it is 5%, 10% or 20% of the way, but it's a start. And what is promising, that could be also a word that I would have taken, but promising is for me that the judicial system decided on a leading position, on a leading political position, and that it was respected. For me, this is a huge step ahead, that the judicial system is independent and that a decision of a court stands, and not that it becomes part of a bargaining or anything else.
So what we often observe is that good laws are made, and then you do have the good laws on paper. And what then? Do you see the implementation, or is this one of the parts where you would point your finger at and say, well, it's not enough to just have it on paper, but it needs to be lived?
We can talk a lot about law enforcement. This is also a problem in Germany. We make laws on taxes and nobody is following them, right? Everybody is searching for the loopholes. Not to fun around, but to make it more serious. For other countries in the region, this challenge of rule of law has become more broadened. If you look into the Chamber of Commerce, for example, in Serbia, they make a yearly, poll and ask their business companies what they think about the investment. For the first time ever since they made it for 25 years, 30 years, whatever, for the first time, the companies mentioned that they would have a problem with the rule of law in Serbia. And Serbia used to be the place where the rule of law was the less challenged in the region, if I may say. And now it becomes part of the economic, society of the companies to think about the rule of law and the situation in Serbia that in their mind seems to have shaken. So this is for me like a warning signal. Law enforcement, and of course, how do prosecutors start a case in Bosnia-Herzegovina? All this needs to be reviewed and needs to fill up on standards that this kind of law enforcement works out with the good laws that are imposed. But on the end of the day, we also need to see what is this kind of things doing with the people that use the laws, mainly the companies that invest in Serbia. And for Serbia, Germany is one of the biggest, or maybe the biggest partner in economic relations.
And we certainly come back to this because there's also some criticism around it, how we are partners. Sofija, you choose the word awakening. So please tell us a little bit what you mean by awakening and what that means for your country, and also with a signaling effect for the region.
Well, I would try to follow up on the atmosphere in Serbia that Boris basically explained by sharing actually the data from the polls of the Chamber of Commerce in Serbia. The last year in Serbia has been, let's say, marked by the youth-led protests, by the student protests that sparked out after the fall of the canopy of the railway station in Novi Sad. This is like a newly opened railway station. It's something it was very huge thing for the country. For the first time, you can arrive from Novi Sad to Belgrade in like 35 minutes, and that was like really huge. It was super promoted. It was opened like very festively in a way, and in the end, for less than, let's say, 2 years after the opening, the canopy of the newly renovated railway station that cost millions killed 16 people. And after that, many people took the streets of Serbia to demand justice. Actually, that's how all this started, and I would say that the main word was responsibility. So basically, it's this whole student protest, it's also wrapped around this quest for rule of law, quest of, some sort of legal certainty and safety within the country, that even if something really bad happens and if somebody has used corruption in a very wrong way, that it took us to the point that the corruption is killing people, that somebody will be held accountable. But that is not happening. And I think that everything that happened with this railway station is just, let's say, the final drop. And actually, I think that for the last 13 years in Serbia, within the country, I don't know how visible was that outside, even though we tried to point out on that, there was an erosion of rights on several levels, and there is an erosion of, let's say, overall societal atmosphere. In a way, it became very hostile towards people, it became very suffocating. So even when you see for example, brain drain data, people are not running mainly for the economic reason. People are running because they lack this basic, security and safety that you deserve as a citizen of any country.
And when you say holding accountable and taking responsibility, do you see that this is happening now?
Well, I see it happening because the people are not giving up. If you ask me the question about accountability, do institutions do their job in a proper manner to hold people accountable? No, everything is still too slow, even though I would say that we see certain voices, especially in judiciary, where people are really trying actually to defend independence of judiciary in Serbia. We see also voices, and they were multiplying throughout all these months in different sectors, actually saying and pointing out what is wrong actually with the way of how Serbia was governed for the last 13 years. But for me, still, let's say that the biggest source and the biggest hope that the accountability will not be lost out of sight in a way are people who are taking the streets of Serbia for more than a year, and nobody is giving up and nobody is tired. And I think that this is a very strong and powerful message.
And we'll come back to the question if you feel that there's enough support from the EU, and also we come back to it. All right, but because I want to bring in Liza and Adnan, exactly. But it is so very important that I already wanted to drop this question that we are going to talk about this. Liza, you remind us of our word, the word you brought into the discussion, because some of our participants weren't there yet when we started. I asked in the beginning, how would you describe the current status or state of democracy in the Western Balkans? And all our speakers said a single word. And Sofija, for example, said awakening. Boris, for example, said it's hard. And Liza, you said
uneven.
Uneven. Yeah. So could you explain to us what that means?
Yeah. Thanks, Stormy. Good to see everyone here to talk about the state of status of the Western Balkan. I think uneven for us in the case of how we were brought into this discussion is not being equal. And I think from the perspective of Western Balkans towards European integration, towards how we've been treated, uneven sometimes feels the right word. Looking at the progress on the ground and looking at the way we get treated, reality shapes a bit differently. And I can talk on the case of Kosovo, and we always look at from the perspective of progress, not much being rewarded, bullies get rewarded in the region. And so in this process of having some bullies being rewarded and having some true standards of democratic principles being implemented, not being rewarded, gives that perception to the citizens that the European Union is not looking for principles and value-based system. It's looking to maintain a status quo in the region. So, and even in the process, even when we push beyond our capacities, there's always a tendency to say, whoa, whoa, slow down, because this is not how far you could go. And so in this aspect, looking at the progress that's been on the ground, whether it be democratic or economical progress. I mean, we have just in 2024 a 4.4 GDP growth, which is a standard for the Western Balkans compared to what has been in the past. Looking into revenues from the taxes, which shows our citizens are building more trust towards the government. We were just talking earlier with Adi about the progress reports. I mean, despite the fact that we are caretaker government, in this progress report we had 35 areas that we've done progress and only 3 that has been stagnation. There has not been backsliding. Despite the fact that we've done so much progress, we still have measures from the European Union being implemented towards us, but we have our northern neighbors that somehow they've been backsliding on democratic progress constantly, but they continue to get rewarded. They continue to have open channels. They continue to be sort of nurtured, at least on the process, but somehow symbolically, sometimes we've been told that, oh, there is statements, there is sort of condemnations, but that's not enough to be able to really practice that in reality within the region.
So, sometimes we say the Western Balkans are the EU's neighbors, but really, I mean, the Western Balkans are right in the heart of Europe, and also surrounded by EU member states. So since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, there is an renewed interest in the region, also from a geopolitical standpoint, because we see also in the region lots of other actors being very active, Russia being one of them, but also China. We also see cyber attacks coming from Iran. So it is a geopolitically contested area. But it is also very much apart from this, or should be in the interest of the European Union, to go faster and more effective on EU enlargement. So if you say that we see there's a renewed interest, there is progress, there are reforms, why isn't it going faster from your point of view? Is it just the EU, or are there also issues within the region which are stumbling blocks?
Certainly we have a lot of homework to do, and we take that seriously. I think countries in the Western Balkans have to push forward in terms of report and have to be practical about the reforms we take, because we want to be part of a larger family and part of a family that has values and standards. So in this aspect, our homework has been to push for the reforms and to continue with implementation. However, these reforms don't always get rewarded, as I say. Secondly, I think from the European Union, there's been a promise for a longest time. I mean, we go back to Thessaloniki, pandemic in 2003, we're still being promised that we will be part of the bigger family. But this promise has not always been a meritocratical process. To be frank, if we were about meritocracy, Kosovo, as it stands as a country that has applied for the candidate status 2 years ago, it's better prepared than any other Western Balkan country that was at the time when they applied. Yet, we don't see that questionnaire in the horizon, and we still have measures in place. Second part of it is, I think, for the longest time, the European Union has allowed malign influence within the region, and has kind of closed eyes towards the practical problems that we have within the region in order to maintain the status quo. Because always confronting partners in the region was not the best choice. And plus, you have 27 members. You don't have just one member making the decision. So it's a consensus among 27 members, and it's harder to see what is going on the region from the same lens. So as a result of it, we've seen the differences in the policy piece, which sometimes don't reflect the reality. When you look at the interest of citizens, I mean, in Kosovo, there's over 90% of the citizens see Kosovo as a part of the European Union. However, that percentage cannot remain forever like that in favor if we don't continue to get rewards within the process. If we continue to be pushed aside and to be sort of seen only with a critical eye. Therefore, I think from the aspect of the European Union and the bigger family, we have to look practical problems within the region and with a focus on malign actors. And who are the countries in the region that are fueling the malign actors? I mean, there's no surprise that Serbia has been one of the countries in the region that has been a proxy for Russia, China, but also Iran in many ways. So as a result of this part, Serbia should be brought forward to be aligned with European security and foreign policy. But when we talk about European security and foreign policy, you have very little discussion about Serbia not aligning. But the rest of the countries in the Western Balkans that align, not only with the security and foreign policy, but also with a number of sort of implications that come within the region.
Well, thank you so much. So Adnan, what would your word was arbitrary. Right? So what is arbitrary about good governance and democracy in the Western Balkans?
I would also maybe say EU is arbitrary about the Western Balkans, but I will respond. I think the entire discussion reminded me of a small joke of difference between optimist and pessimist observer of the Western Balkans. Optimist thinks that things can get worse, while pessimist thinks no, things cannot get worse than they are today. I think when we talk about the arbitrariness within the countries, I'm thinking about the rule of law. You know, if you're going to apply for an ID, if you're going to do a traffic accident in Bosnia or in Kosovo or in Serbia, if you are an ordinary citizen with no political connections or no family background, there will be a rule of law imposed on you. There will be rules being enforced of you. But if you're part of the political elite, at least in some of the countries, if you're part of the economic elites, if you have connections through family, it doesn't mean that you will end up being punished for the things. Same goes for your businesses. If you try to strive your businesses in the country, if you have connections with the government, with the parties, if you work, you will get by the rule of law, and otherwise not. When I speak about the arbitrariness of the EU, I was before this session, and I think many of you have been on the main stage about the political prisoners. I mean, we come from the region where in Yugoslavia, we had political prisoners because if people were thinking differently or wanting to democratize the country, they would end up in prison or be expelled from the country. A lot of Kosovo Albanians were in prison because they wanted to speak Albanian, or a lot of others as well. We went through the war, massacres, genocide, killing, war crimes, etc. We went through, total media blackdown in the 1990s. But after the 1990s, in early 2000s, we really made progress. I mean, in 2005, 2006, I would even argue until 2010, if you would go to the Western Balkans and say, so where are the political prisoners? We need to talk about it. People would be laughing at you and saying, well, that's past gone. Media are much more free. Yes, we don't have fully rule of law. But today, Sofia, I don't think that people would be laughing, at least in parts of the region. We would be telling you that there are indications of some of the individuals really being politically prosecuted, sitting in prison. There are. I will leave it up to you to assess that happily. So we have made this, because of the arbitrariness of the EU, not understanding its geopolitical interests, not doing more in the Western Balkans when it could. could, we've ended up reversing and going back. And this is what my biggest fear about this arbitrariness inside the countries are, but also the arbitrariness of the EU's approach towards the region.
And Sofija, the space for civil society organizations, for the civic space, is shrinking in your country, and also because it becomes now so much easier to use technologies also to check up on people, right? I mean, this is something which you are experiencing, with which a lot of your friends are experiencing.
Yeah, I think that the story about how civil society is threatened is not anymore a topic in the Western Balkans, and I'm actually very happy for that, even though I myself am a member of civil society, because I always believed that the story about civil society is actually a story of what could happen to a Serbian society in any time when they are being perceived as a civil society. And that is exactly actually what happened. We were always trying to actually highlight this challenge of shrinking civic space, which is not a news. It started, like, I would say that it intensified in 2015, and it just, reached new levels of, let's say, bad. In the last couple of years, especially after COVID. But now I think that everything that civil society was actually pointing out, this is now happening to every citizen of Serbia who dares and who has courage to speak about the injustices that are happening in our country. And this is something, and that's when Adi said there are indications. There are no indications, there are data. More than 900 people in the last year were detained, arrested, or kept in prison for a short period of time in different ways. And these are like data that can be very easily checked. And there is also a group of 6 young activists, which are all young people aged from 21 to 25, who are currently living in political exile. So if young people aged 21 who have been wiretapped, who have been illegally wiretapped, and these recordings have been published and obtained by the Security Intelligence Service. So I think that this is not Serbia that I want to see. And this is not, I hope, as well as the people on the street, that this is not the Serbia that we are fighting for, actually.
I'm looking at our organizers since we started quite late. Is it okay that we run to 1:45?
The next panel is already waiting.
All right, maybe then you give us a few more minutes since we only started at 1:05, so that we can at least have a few questions from the audience. I think that would pay justice to all of our panelists who came really a far way from their respective countries. So who would like to come in and ask a question to our panelists? Yes, please. We have a mic also. It's coming right behind you. And please tell us who you are. It's coming on the left-hand side, right-hand side from you.
So thank you very much. Krzysztof Gostoni from the Humboldt University of Berlin. A question about Serbia. How would you assess the current situation after the 1st of November? And this is to you, Sofija, and Boris maybe also. And was it successful? Do you feel it increased momentum or it maintained momentum? And also, how was it perceived here, maybe within the EU and German political circles? As far as I can understand, it was that Western or European media coverage was much stronger than previous demonstrations or events had it. What is your take? What is the direction? What are the dynamics now? Thank you very much.
Is there anybody else who would like to come in? We can take one more, and then yes, please.
Hello, I'm Elisabeth Pilgaard from the European Endowment for Democracy. 2 questions for Sofija as well. I was in Belgrade in 2000 when Milosevic was kicked out, and there was great formation of opposition coming from all sides of society. And I see very interesting developments with the youth movements now in Serbia, organized in a very different way. So maybe some reflections on how the strength of not being organized in traditional way and how you're navigating. And the other question is for Adnan, I would say, on Bosnia and Herzegovina. I was also there during the Dayton Agreement. It stopped the war, it didn't stop the conflict, and we now have a Republika Srpska going crazy, we can say, to the least. What do you see of possibilities of making a total shift on the constitution and actually getting systems right for I think, to honor the people of Bosnia-Herzegovina? Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Then we use those two wonderful questions, very spot on, for our last round with our panelists. So Sofija, let's start with you, and then Boris, Liza, and Adnan.
I will be super brief. When it comes to the way how youth is organized, I really like and I strongly believe that that's the authentic response of this new generation of young people in Serbia. And I always believed that when you show up with authentic response, it's very hard from the other side to, apply traditional measures of silencing people towards you. But I also think that this way of organizing also entailed the lessons learned from the previous 13 years, how people were silenced and what kind of tactics and techniques were used against people. When it comes to the first question about how I would describe the stage in Serbia, I would describe it as difficult, to get back to Boris' word. I would describe it as difficult now because I strongly believe that we are in a very unique point where there are so many global challenges that are much more important than the Western Balkans, and that Serbia has this already long path that is on which Serbia is towards the EU, and there is a lot of ties and political connections and basically aspirations also of foreign countries to see Serbia in the EU in a way. What I think that this rebellion also brought is more clarity to what civil society, minority groups were warning about the current regime in Serbia and about the consequences and how that can be reflected also on the Serbian European path. I am optimist, and I really I cannot say that I don't see that. I see shift in the perspectives, maybe not the shift that I wanted to see when it comes to the understanding of international community towards what is happening in Serbia, but I see the shift. And what I'm actually very proud of, that people turned out to be very resilient. So it's not just civil society actually that was resilient throughout these 13 years. Random citizens, people from small environments, minorities, actually showed that they are very resilient. I'm super proud of young Bosniaks who are citizens of Serbia and how they shape this fight and resistance, and how they are showing actually new ways of reconciliation within the country that is also very much needed. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Sofija. I think this is an applause for you, Boris.
Yes, for the situation in Serbia, I'm very happy that the EU starts to recognize what is going on the ground. If you see the latest report, this is mentioning challenges, huge challenges, and the backlash Serbia has made in the last, let's say, 10 years. For the situation of the protests, we must see that there is not one homogeneous group. There is a lot of different groups. And that's the most challenging thing about democracy. It is sitting on the table and finding solution, finding compromises, so tough is the way ahead for any democratic path that you want to go. And in Serbia, especially, this situation with an authoritarian government that is, setting out elections by their free will, by their own will, that's not a fair chance. So it's not a free choice. People are not really free because media is influencing them, but also there is not a fair chance for any candidate to run or any party to run, because Mr. Vučić says, this is the moment when I decide to have billboards outside and the rest can join afterwards, like within weeks later. Let me add one more thing about the brain drain, because this is a situation that is happening to all the countries in the region. I think Bosnia has the most severe brain drain. We have 1,200 doctors here in Germany from Bosnia-Herzegovina, 1,200. So that means medical education is the most expensive, and the country needs themselves doctors. So why do all the people flee? So why do all the people go away to find their fortune in other countries? Because they are sick of the headlines. This is what people come telling me, Boris, I cannot listen to the headlines any longer. I earn less money in Stockholm or in Switzerland, but seriously, headlines don't bother me and kick me out of my sleep. Maybe this is something we have to talk about. This goes for Kosovo as well. This goes for the entire region. And the very last word on Skopje, I would love to have North Macedonia to be more recognized.
Well, thank you so much. Over to Liza.
I think I'm also an optimist about the future of the region, and I would want the region to be integrated in the European Union. We all are working towards that shared goal. However, we think that it's important to reward progress, but I also think we have to put benchmarks and sanction against backsliding. If we continue to promote countries in the region that have backslid in democracy, unfortunately, we are not walking the talk. And I think that's the biggest concern, and that's something that is being reflected on the public in general, because this potential progress on benchmarks and on backsliding would actually help also the public to be more awakening to what Sofija was saying about the reality that we would not be felt like alone voices, but we will be felt that we are being heard by the bigger family that we want to join. But that goes in line with the principles and values, and it has to be a meritocratic process. We are willing to do the homework, but we want to be treated equally. We are not looking for only a positive discrimination. We are only looking for equality in this process to put progress where it is.
Thank you.
And a quick answer on the question of Bosnia. I think there are two ways. One is orderly and one is disorderly. Disorderly we have seen since 2021, an attempt by Milorad Dodik and people supporting him in Banja Luka to unilaterally, unconstitutionally, and with use of violence, which we were in March this year almost, to try to change the constitution and try to change the constitutional and institutional architecture of the country. And there is orderly way. Orderly way means through all majorities that are needed to sit and agree on changes. And I think we've seen in the past 15 years that is very difficult to motivate. But when we did have those kind of changes, EU and the perspective of joining the EU was extremely important motor. So I think if the EU would, due to everything that is happening in Ukraine, but also in the region, really seriously consider Bosnia and Herzegovina and other countries that are willing to reform and change to then include in some way in the EU, I think that would be the best orderly way for Bosnia and Herzegovina to change and for its citizens to then have a say in what kind of country they would like to see.
Well, thank you very much. In this changing geopolitical environment where all regions are fighting for attention, we brought a little bit of attention to the Western Balkans, fighting also at the conference here for attention for this region. Thank you so much for our panelists and for this discussion. And thank you very much to the audience.